Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I hope you managed to grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next presenter. It's none and only Carol Reed, who is very well known here in the world of ELT. Carol has over 30 years experience in ELT as a teacher, trainer, academic manager, materials writer, an educational consultant, and has worked in many countries all over the world. And as many of you know, Carol specializes in younger learner teaching, and of course is the author of this fantastic book, which I'm sure many of you know, 500 Activities for the Primary Classroom. So Carol, welcome. How are you today?
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm fine. I'm very well. Grey and rainy morning in Madrid.
You're in Madrid. So we've just been to New Zealand, and now we're on the other side of the world here in Spain, via Poland, of course. So thank you very much, Carol. The floor is now yours.
Okay, thanks a lot, Glenn, and good morning to everyone, and lovely to see you all here. And great. Okay, so there we go. Let me just make sure I can see the chat box. Okay, fantastic. Yes, there it is. Okay, so welcome then to this webinar on a whole child approach, key to learning in uncertain times. Whatever their age, no child is immune to the anxieties, stresses and uncertainties that we're all living through with the pandemic. And this makes it more important than ever to adopt a whole child approach in our teaching. And in this webinar, we're going to talk about what is meant by a whole child approach. And I'd like to unpack the word whole as an acronym for 5 key ingredients. We're also going to explore a range of practical ideas suitable for different ages and levels, and that can be adapted whether you're teaching face-to-face or online. So what actually is a whole child approach? And if you could just now put any thoughts, words, ideas that come to you in the chat box there, so I can see whether we're on the same page. Just any ideas. What is a whole child approach? Can I see your ideas there? Okay, fantastic. Holistic, absolutely. Multisensory, developing all their skills. Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. So a whole child approach involves catering for all aspects of children's social, emotional, psychological, physical, cognitive, creative and language development. And language is just one aspect of their development. And we need to work towards this in a way that's integrated with all other aspects. And the paradox is that by taking a whole child approach and attending to all their developmental needs, children learn more English than in a more narrowly focused, language-driven approach. And we can illustrate a whole child approach quite simply with an example of an action song for preschoolers or lower primary. And I'm sure you all recognize the song there. My voice is a little hoarse, but you can just join in doing the actions and singing the first verse with me. So we go, 5 little ducks go swimming one day, over the pond and far away. Mummy duck says quack, 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 but only 4 little ducks come back. Okay, so the song potentially contributes to different aspects of children's development. Social, joining in singing with others, psychological, relating to the ducks getting lost, emotional, the pleasure in participation and the empathy that you feel with the lost ducks, physical, by coordinating actions in time to the rhythm, cognitive, counting backwards in this case, and associating the numbers with the ducks, creative, asking children to imagine why the ducks don't come back to their mummy immediately, and language, numbers 1 to 5, and of course other language and vocabulary that in a case of an authentic song like this is likely to be beyond the typical syllabus of the course book. But of course, a whole child approach depends on the way we do the song. If we just focus on language and numbers practice, we're missing out on giving children a more enjoyable, memorable, and valuable learning experience. So a key message from this webinar is that whatever activity or learning sequence you do with children, and I would also say whatever their age, you need to think beyond language and give other developmental aspects equal importance and weight. So now let's go on to take the word whole as an acronym of key ingredients that will help you to implement a whole child approach into your teaching. Any guesses in the chat box for what W stands for? Any guesses for W? Quick as you can in the chat box. Can I see your ideas? W, an inclusive approach, okay. We, oh lovely, wellness, absolutely fantastic. Well, you've practically hit the nail on the head there, because W is for well-being. And well-being is difficult to define, and sometimes it gets equated with happiness, but it's not just happy, which is a temporary state and may also refer sometimes to getting what you want, which isn't always necessarily good for you. And well-being is more to do with having experiences that are meaningful and valuable, including emotions that you feel are appropriate to different situations. In the literature on well-being, subjective well-being is talked about as referring to a person's own feelings and assessment of how well their life is going. And psychological well-being refers to their sense of purpose in life and also experiencing a sense of fulfillment or achievement. So essentially, well-being means feeling good, both about yourself and about the world around you, and being able to get on with life with confidence. And actually, one way of understanding well-being is to look at the behavior of people who have it. And according to psychological research, intentional activities identified that increase and maintain people's level of well-being include investing in close relationships, having high levels of gratitude and appreciation for others, being helpful and kind and altruistic, having an optimistic outlet, living in the moment, having exercise and a sense of purpose. And so for children, well-being includes all these elements that you can see here on the screen. I'm not going to read them all out, but as you can see, there's a balance between physical, psychological, emotional, and social aspects. So who has the key to children's well-being? And I think it's fairly obvious that it's parents, carers, family that are crucial to children's well-being. But teachers are also important as well, as this slightly adapted quote shows. I love this quote by Veronica de Andres. Parents have the key to children's well-being, but teachers have a spare one. I've slightly adapted the quote here. The original is self-esteem, but self-esteem is obviously also an important part of well-being. So how do we promote well-being in our classes, whether online or face-to-face? And I think there are two main ways. One is by, if you like, osmosis or permeation, terms that actually get used for developing culture. Michael Byrom uses that term, permeation, and osmosis, developing thinking skills. which also gets used in the literature. And I think well-being happens in the same way as well, but also through specific activities. And let's have a look at both. So it's not rocket science, but I think it's worth saying. Build positive relationships by creating a warm, friendly environment, showing that you care, listening with sensitivity and interest, and modeling behavior that you expect. And I think particularly we have to think about this when we're teaching children online, that we nominate children, that we make sure that we include them, that when they respond to online activities we acknowledge their contributions, and so on. By creating an inclusive classroom where children feel safe and diversity is valued, more than valued, it's celebrated. Use learning routines to frame your lessons and give children security and confidence that they know what to do and what to expect. And that's equally true online or face-to-face. Manage children positively by proactively training them in appropriate behavior, setting up those parameters for how you expect your children to behave. Valuing multilingual identities. Increasingly, our profession is not about teaching English as a foreign language, but it's about valuing children's multilingual identities, all the languages they speak, by encouraging comparisons between languages and also not always insisting on English. Scaffolding language and learning by using images, body language, mime, gestures, puppet, effective questioning techniques to support children's participation. Giving positive feedback and encouragement, including, importantly, descriptive praise, which helps children build up their self-knowledge about what they can do. And the last point there, including collective and cooperative activities. So collective activities such as singing and storytelling with a communal focus that has everyone, as Van Leer says, intersubjectively engaged, and cooperative activities such as projects which provide opportunities for children to develop social and language skills in an integrated way. So let's just have a look at an example. That's the kind of osmosis side. So let's have a look at three examples of practical activities that we can do. And the first one is to help create a sense of classroom community, team spirit, bonding, and a sense of belonging. Important face-to-face or online. And what you do is brainstorm positive team values. This may be by referring to teams that the children know, sports teams, for example, and also that is an opportunity, of course, to introduce vocabulary that may be needed. So children then choose one value and design and make a card, which can be as elaborate as the time you wish to spend on this, for a team, or rather class, poster or flag. And during this time, what you want to emphasize is children's individual contribution to a collective outcome. And remember that acronym TEAM, together, everyone achieves more. Children then think of a name, decide on a name for their team. Of course, you could use an online poll to do this. You could gather their suggestions and then they vote for the one they like best, you know, the online heroes or whatever it is. And you can then refer to the class going forward by name. Come on, online heroes, to reinforce that sense of community. And children can, of course, design a logo for their class team. And it's incredibly bonding when you do this and leads to a sense of collective well-being. The next activity, it's cool to be kind. I first learned about this activity some time ago as a positive reframing of an anti-bullying initiative. And actually, according to the psychological literature, carrying out acts of kindness creates a virtuous circle of positivity. When we help others, it makes us feel good. And when we feel good, we tend to help others more. And the psychological research evidence for this books, well, Aknin et al. 2011, any of you who are interested in following up the references, and Schnall and Roper also 2011. So what you do in this activity is that you set up with the children that they are going to plan to carry out an act of kindness at home. For example, I'm going to make my mum breakfast in bed at the weekend. Wouldn't that be nice? Note how you or the other person feels when you carry out this act of kindness. Take a photo or video, if possible, and write about it and report back. And of course, we could give children a template to do this. I made my mum breakfast in bed at the weekend. It made me feel happy and helpful. It made my mum feel very surprised. Okay, and in face-to-face teaching, you can also do the same get children to do the same activity with their classmates at school. And the third activity, what went well? And this activity is to do with reframing our thoughts and experiences positively rather than focusing on the negative, which we often tend to do. And so with this activity, children at the end of the week, they note 3 things that went well. You're actually getting them to think about all the things that went right rather than went wrong. They share one of their ideas and make a poster or display of all their ideas. And for example, if you're online, you could use a tool like Padlet to do that. So to conclude on research shows that children's level of well-being is a key factor in how they do at school. It also boosts their social and emotional skills and behaviour. And of course, you also need to look after your own well-being, the other side of the coin, as this impacts significantly on children's well-being too. In fact, you might just try doing the what went well activity for yourselves at the end of each week. Moving on then to our next letter, H. Any guesses for H in the chat box, please? Any guesses for H? Oh, happiness, how lovely. Yeah, that would be great. Happiness would be a bit like well-being. Okay, any ideas? Any ideas? Okay. Health, wonderful. Yeah, very important. Here and now. Fantastic. Help. Yeah, there are lots of ideas there. Okay, so actually, H is for, there we go. H is for head and heart. Hulligan's hope. Oh, I love it. Okay, I could add all these. It's for head and heart. And I would also say these days for human connection. The importance of engaging head and heart for effective and pleasurable learning, and whether you're teaching online or face-to-face, the connection and bond that you establish with children has a crucial role to play in their learning. And head, of course, is to do with the appropriate level of cognitive challenge to develop important thinking and academic skills across the curriculum, and the development of metacognition is also important, as we'll see a bit later. And heart, obviously, to do with your feelings and emotional response to learning, and relates to the whole area of social and emotional learning. And practical examples of things that are easy to access and use, whether in online or face-to-face lessons, has directed the choice of examples that I share with you. And so I'd like to start off just looking at the appeal of images. And obviously we want to use license-free sources for images and use them to stimulate children's thinking and do a range of activities, whether face-to-face or online. So with this one, first of all, what is it? In the chat box, quick as you can, please. What is it? What is it? Yes, yes, absolutely. It's a dolphin. So we might do a see, think, wonder activity based on this image, a visible thinking routine from the Harvard Project Zero. So you might put any ideas you have in the chat box. I see, or I think, or I wonder. Okay, you could do that. One activity that I've done with this image is to get children to count as fast as they can how many teeth they can see, to count or estimate how many teeth. Can you have a quick guess in the chat box? How many teeth can you see? 40, okay, lovely. Actually, when I've counted this, I've seen 64, probably wrongly, but apparently 80, yes, apparently dolphins have between 80 and 100 teeth. But actually, when they eat fish, they swallow them whole. So, you know, there's a good inquiry-based learning question there. Why do dolphins have all these teeth? The other thing that I've done with this that you can use with many other images as well is a speech or thought bubble competition. What's the dolphin thinking or saying? And of course, very often we can combine the use of images with a graphic organizer, such as a KWLH grid, as a stimulus for self-directed investigation and project work to be done outside the lesson. And using a grid like this is a way of integrating language skills, thinking skills, research skills, metacognitive skills. The grid actually usually has 3 columns, but I like to add a 4th to get children to reflect on the process of their learning. So using the image of a dolphin as a springboard, children complete the grid with things they already know about dolphins. They then formulate questions about what they want to find out, and children can copy and complete the grid individually or work collaboratively in breakout rooms, or alternatively, when teaching remotely, you can use a tool like the wallpaper format of Padlet to get children to collaborate and share their ideas for questions about what they want to know. And I'm sure you're using this very frequently, but you create the Padlet and copy the link into the chat box and children post their questions. I would just say one really important thing here is to respond whenever a child posts a question and contributes. You know, sometimes as teachers, we're so busy wondering whether we're managing to use our technology tools correctly, we forget about the investment a child has made in actually posting a question. And I've heard children say, well, I contribute things, but my teacher never says anything, so I'm actually not going to bother anymore. So I think that is a really, really important point when you're working with children online. Children can then, for example, choose 3 questions to investigate, or all the questions that interest them. And outside in asynchronous time, children do research and prepare a presentation or fact file on dolphins to present to the class, possibly using a kid's search engine such as Kiddle. You can also use an image like this as a springboard into inquiry-based learning, building on children's curiosity and what they know, and leading to discovery and in an autonomous and motivated way, followed by reflection on learning. Children do their research independently outside the lesson and present and justify their opinions about why they think dolphins are amazing. A second example I'd just like to share with you, using multimodal materials that are freely available online, is based on the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals and drawing on the world's largest lesson, educational resources. And I've put the link for you there below, because this is a fantastic resource for us to use both in online lessons and when we're working face to face. And what we're going to do is to tell the children that they're going to watch a video that is called A Call to Climate Learning, and featuring children and young people from around the world talking about climate change issues. And of course, you could get children to either predict the issues before I showed you this screen, or if you show them the screen, to actually think about what are some of the problems and possible solutions related to these issues. They might work in breakout rooms to share ideas about what they know. And this is also an opportunity for you to introduce relevant vocabulary, to find out which issues they're most interested and concerned about, which ones they think affect their region or country most, and any other issues they can identify which aren't included. For example, children might come up with rising sea levels and melting glaciers. What we then might go on to do is to actually introduce the children to the people in the video, and children can predict the issues that they talk about. So for example, I think Helena talks about deforestation. I think Dante talks about endangered animals. With an initial video task, we then get the children to watch the video and either match the people and issues, or note the order in which they speak. And after they've watched the video, super important to invite a personal response, which person and initiative do you admire most? In the second task for the video, children choose one person that they want to kind of follow, if you like, and find out more detail about the problem and the positive action that they've taken. I'm not going to show you the video now because for permission reasons, but you are encouraged to use these resources in your classes. And I would very much recommend that you go and have a look at this video. I've given, not now, but after, I've given you the link there at the bottom of the screen. And it's a perfect video for our lessons because it's very short, 3 minutes. It's very rich, it's very accessible, and it's a wonderful learning sequence for you to do to get children thinking about the climate emergency, whether you're teaching online, as I gather a lot of you are at the moment, or face-to-face, or doing hybrid. It works in all kind of contexts. And in the post video, children report back on the issues and actions taken. And this then leads into further personalized, creative and collaborative work, following, which I'll show you, following the next letter in our whole learning ingredients. And the next letter, we've done Wellbeing, we've done Head and Heart, and the next letter is O. So could I have any guesses in the chat box for what O stands for? Wonderful, straight, Kate, you got it in one. Any other ideas? Any other ideas? Opportunities, absolutely. And actually it stands open mind. I love it, Lavina, that's fantastic. Okay, O stands for options and opportunities. And the idea here is that when you choose your own chocolate from the chocolate box, you're likely to savor and enjoy it much more than if someone else chooses it for you. That actually by having that option, by having that choice, you have investment in learning, you buy in, you have ownership of it. And so we need to offer children options and opportunities to contribute in divergent personal ways, to take risks, to be inventive, to be resourceful, to be playful, creative, to be autonomous, take risks. I'm sure you've got lots of other ideas you could put in the chat box there as well, to cooperate and work together as a team, and also to learn values such as collaborating and life skills such as organizing and planning. And one very practical way of doing this is through using choice boards. Choice boards, which are another graphic organizer, and graphic organizers are something that work superbly, both face-to-face and online. And a choice board gives children 6 or 9 options for what they're going to do. So this offers autonomy, it creates buy-in and ownership in carrying out tasks, and importantly, it also allows you to differentiate the level of difficulty or the nature of tasks to meet the needs of different students. So going back to our climate example video that we were looking at a bit earlier, when children have watched the video and done work on comprehension and the vocabulary and actually rehearsed being able to talk about the issues for themselves, we offer them a choice board with outcomes that they will produce as a result of all their learning. And these options for project-based work that I've put up there on the screen, I'm not going to read them all out, but you can read them yourselves there now. And these options for project work derive from the positive actions that children have heard about in the video. And very often, if you put up a choice board like this, you know, a child will say, well, I've got another idea for something that I want to do. And that's absolutely fantastic as well, or that we want to do, and that the children are going to work on together. So options and opportunities are a crucial ingredient of whole learning. Moving on now to letter L. Any guesses for letter L in the chat box? Love, oh, I love it. Who's that? Karina, fantastic. Love, lean on me, lovely. Okay, not lean in, not the, okay, lean on me, yes, depend on me, learning, laughter, oh, fantastic, that's lovely, laughter I love, because it's absolutely a key ingredient, isn't it? Any others? Any other ideas? No, well, that's fantastic. Actually, I mean, my L is far more pragmatic, I must say, because being an English language teacher, I'm thinking of that, and that actually a whole child approach in an ELT context also does need to cater for children's language needs as much as possible. So L in this model is for language and literacy. And as part of a whole child approach in an ELT context, we do need to make sure that we do everything we can to develop and enrich children's language and literacy. We have a responsibility towards our children, towards the institutions that we work for, the expectations of parents, and so on. So language and literacy is really important. And of course, there are many, many different ways that we do this. And one that many of you will be familiar with is using picture books. And I would say here that when we're using picture books, that the key in a whole child approach is to focus on meaning-based activities and to value children's diverse personal and emotional responses rather than to insist on language practice for its own sake. There's nothing quicker to kill children's enjoyment of a story than to insist on repetitive grammar practice of a particular structure that may come up. All these examples on the screen here are, picture books that I've used with children over the years, sometimes many years. Those of you spotting Megan Mogg there, which was published way back in the 80s, and that I've used for years. Other ones much more recent, such as And Tango Makes Three, which is the most delightful story about family diversity. Of course, it's difficult for us to use picture books when we're teaching online. And I would just like to, and this is partly why I've chosen to focus on picture books, to draw your attention to 2 free storytelling resources made during the lockdown to support teachers, parents and children, which can be used as part of home learning, online teaching or in class. And the first resource is the PPELT mini e-lessons, PPELT that some of you will know, will be familiar with. And during the lockdown, they created a series of 22 mini e-lessons based on videos of children's authors and illustrators reading their stories out loud. So this is material that is easily accessible on YouTube. You can find these videos, and you've got these mini e-lessons to go with the story. So what this means is you don't need to have the picture book yourself, okay? So that is a resource that I would actually highly recommend. And the other one I wanted to tell you about is this one, which is called Storytime with Carol. And this is also something that I did during the first lockdown. I made a series of 12 storytelling activities and 12 teaching tip videos with lots of ideas that can be used online in home learning or face-to-face learning. You can show the videos in your online classes or in your face-to-face classes, and the teaching tips videos have lots of ideas to follow up for online classes. And I just want to point these out to you because I think they are both the PPELT videos based on picture books and these storytelling activities give you a lot of ideas. And also, if you want to use other books, you can follow the procedures and methodology suggested in order to do that. But I've also wanted to, as well as telling you about those resources, to choose a couple of examples of language and literacy activities. And again, I've chosen to share activities with you where you can have access to the texts, even if you don't have the book. Okay, and the first one is this picture book, The Day War Came, that I have here. And this is an extraordinarily moving book about child refugees, but at the same time, optimism and hope. And I think you may wonder why I've chosen a book with this theme. But I think children at the moment really realize the seriousness of what we're going through. And they actually often want to engage with real issues rather than be fobbed off with trivia. It also, I'm sorry to say, resonates with them, the idea that your world can be turned upside down from one day to the next. Okay, this book is called The Day War Came, but children can easily imagine the day COVID came. And the book is based on the text of a poem by Nicola Davis, and I've put the link at the bottom there so that you can get the whole text, even though I know you haven't got the book. And this was a poem written in response to an appalling moment back in 2016, when the British government refused entry to 3,000 unaccompanied child refugees. And it's also beautifully illustrated by Rebecca Cobb. And the book enshrines children's right to be safe and to have an education. How resonant is that for us now? And it also provides opportunities for children to develop empathy, understanding, and explore difficult issues, as well as the power of kindness. And the chair in the story becomes a symbol of solidarity and hope. So of course, there's a lot of work that we can do on this book. For example, just thinking of the cover that you have before you now. Why do you think, asked the children, why was it decided to design the title words in that way? And actually, when you show them the back of the book, which you can see now, The Day War Came, it opens up as a complete double image. We then might ask the children to describe the little girl on the cover. How do you think she's feeling? Why has she got her hands over her ears? And then also, one of the things that is standard to do when you're using a picture book in class is to actually read the blurb on the back of the book, which starts off, imagine if on an ordinary day war came. Imagine if you had to make a dangerous journey. Imagine if you had lost everything. And so we can ask children, what's the author asking us to do? And at the end, gave you something small but very precious. We can ask children to predict whether they think the book is going to be a book of hope or despair. And you may think this is a very dark and serious subject, but I really think that these days, children, of course there are other things as well, but I found that this book actually resonates hugely with children. And there are lots of activities that you can do, but as a creative challenge, the chair, which becomes the symbol of hope at the end of the story, and children all bring a chair so that all the children who are being excluded from school can go to school. You get children to design their own chair that they will bring. And the second activity for language and literacy that I would like to share with you is also based on a text that you can freely access online. Again, this is one of the reasons I chose it. And this is based on the most extraordinary essay by Arundhati Roy that you may have already read. I would suggest this activity is good for secondary learners, it's good for adult learners. And I've just put the text of the last two paragraphs of the essay on the screen there. And I think you would actually just take a moment to read those two paragraphs. You would need to do a bit of vocabulary work, but the idea is to use this incredibly creative idea, the pandemic is a portal, as a springboard into getting children to creatively imagine another world. So we can give a STEM for that. I imagine a world where, would you like to put any ideas in the chat box? I imagine a world where, after the pandemic, I am ready to fight for, okay, that we don't want to go back to the same old world we had, that this is an opportunity to do things differently. And of course, with children, we can also get them to draw pictures on both sides of the portal. So maybe on one side of the portal, they would draw pictures of skies busy with aeroplanes, and on the other side, clear blue skies, where perhaps we're paying more attention to how we're ruining our planet. Okay, so moving on, we've got to our last letter. Fight for kindness to one another, fantastic. Any predictions for the last letter, E? Any predictions? Evolve, lovely, I love it, Julia. Evolution, evolve, enthusiasm, fantastic, energy, yes, all those 5 E's that we need to teach children, empathy, everyone, oh no, brilliant, education, lovely, oh gosh, I love your ideas. I'm afraid again, mine's far more prosaic. Mine is E for evaluation. And actually the importance of developing children's metacognition and their ability to think about and reflect on their learning. Because actually, in order to make our learners, independent, autonomous, able to assess themselves, they need to have these metacognitive skills. And I think this example here is an example of a self-evaluation by an English-speaking child, age 6. And the reason I'm showing it to you is because I think, teachers often say to me, but children are so young, they can't evaluate their own learning. But actually, it shows how children are capable of metacognitive thinking and how we can get them to review their learning, whether we do that in their mother tongue or shared language rather than English, or perhaps, a judicious mixture of both. And of course, with older children who have more developed metacognitive skills, I would say the importance of having regular learning reviews and focusing on what I think of as the 5 Ps. So focusing on what children have learned, the product, how they have learnt it, the process, why they have learnt it, the purpose, how well they've done, the progress they think they've made, and how they will go on learning, the plan. So I think this development of metacognitive thinking is incredibly important, not just for children's learning and a whole child approach, but also to developing their critical and creative thinking as well. But metacognition is hugely important. So I think that brings us to the end of our 5 key ingredients, and there they are recapped on the screen for you there. And I'd love to add all the wonderful ideas you had as well in this session. And I think my final message is that whatever their age, and very often a whole child approach is used exclusively to talk about preschool children, but I would suggest actually far older than that. So whatever their age, by integrating all aspects of children's development into our teaching, we not only enrich children's learning experience and develop their well-being, make them feel confident in themselves and support their learning, but we also achieve more successful and long-lasting learning outcomes. So I think that brings me to the end of the session. Thank you very much, and for all your lovely contributions. And if there are any questions, I'm not sure, but I think there's a few minutes to answer some questions if anybody has any questions. Let me have a look at the Q&A here. Do you know picturebooks online versions? Yeah, there are plenty of sources of if you just put picturebooks online, you'll be overwhelmed actually by how many there are. There are YouTube videos of children's authors and illustrators reading their own picture books. There are some videos that actually I'm not, because for copyright reasons you're not allowed to do it yourself and record things that aren't your own copyright, but there are plenty of sources. And actually, I'm trying to remember, I think it's through We Are Teachers that during the pandemic, we're still living the pandemic, during the early spring, children's authors were recording videos of their books in order to support children's learning at home. There are also a lot of animated versions of picture books. For example, the Oliver Jeffers picture book that I showed you on the screen earlier, the Gruffalo, exactly. The Gruffalo, there's a whole website on the Gruffalo, and masses of resources out there. So if you just put, you know, picture books and children's learning, or picture books and ELT, you'll come up with a lot of things. Any other questions? Thank you for, in which course books can this approach be found? Well, I have to say, I mean, I have to be honest about this. It underpins all the work I do, whether course books or not course books. I feel really, really passionately that we're missing a trick if we just hammer away with a language sledgehammer when we're working with children. We're not going to be as successful as language teachers as if we take the whole child and their own interests. Of course we can make them do any activity we want. We're the authority, we're the teacher. But actually you only spark that real love of learning when you tap into their interests, tap into their stage of development, and allow their learning and their love of learning and their love of language to grow from there. Any other questions? Michael Rosen reading, yeah, that's true. Yes, and that's one of the e-lessons developed on the PPELT website. So yes, that's one you could definitely go. And Michael Rosen is absolutely fantastic, isn't he? Yeah, yeah, poor guy. He really suffered from COVID. He's been through a terrible time. Any other questions? Any other things? Just scrolling through here. No? Okay. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Carol. Can you hear me okay, Carol?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, good. Okay. Well, thank you. Sorry, look like you're just stationary then, frozen for us.
Well, I wasn't sure whether I wasn't seeing questions or hearing a voice.
I think everybody's you know, already given their questions. So thank you so much for your great presentation, and thank you for the questions as well from the audience. Very useful again, Carol. Very practical ideas. Because no, it is difficult teaching younger learners, especially online. I know some of my teachers find it difficult teaching 7 to 8 year olds online. So your presentation, I'm sure, has been very, very useful for them. So thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
Great. Okay. Thanks a lot. No, well, I've done a webinar on ideas for engaging children virtually. But if teachers are interested, that's very much 7 and 8 year olds, that they could have a look at that.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carol. Have a great day. And hopefully the sun will start shining in Madrid at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Bye then. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.